Kevin, if you could tell us a little bit about the history of the CSTDA and the Dogs for Life initiative.
Okay, CSTDA, that stands for the Centre for Service and Therapy Dogs of Australia. It was started because of a need, a very real personal need. My son is very autistic, and when it became that we couldn't continue supporting him, we looked around for a dog to assist us because some of his behaviors had become very confronting. And we went through, I would say, almost every trainer in Australia looking for someone to train a dog for our son. It wasn't straightforward because my son doesn't communicate effectively and he doesn't behave as expected. The trainers, and I'm talking about regular trainers, assistance dog trainers, assistance dogs, they didn't really understand that I wasn't looking for a dog to pick up a pen or a piece of paper. I was looking for a dog that was going to help my son communicate. And they were telling me, don't worry, we'll teach your son to say sit. I was saying garbage. You're not going to teach my son to say sit. My son cannot say sit. My son cannot communicate. Eventually, I gave up looking in Australia, and that was after I had a list at the time of around about 200 odd names. And we went overseas. And we found a gentleman in the Middle East, and his participants looked at him as if he walked on water, believe it or not. Eventually, I get a meeting with him, and I'm at that point, I'm working internationally in an international organization, so I'm in the Middle East, and I stop in and ask him, and he agrees to come to Australia and sort out a dog for my son. And the difference between what he did and what other people did was that he built a program around the dog. So the dog became central to a program. And he came to Australia, gave us the dog. The dog changed my son's life, which was fantastic.
Amazing.
But what was more fantastic was it changed my life as his support person and changed my partner's life. All of a sudden, we could sleep together without my son in the bed. And at this point, for those folks who know ASD, they will know this is quite regular. It happens. My son was 16 and he was co-sleeping with us. He got his dog on his 18th birthday and he stopped sleeping with us. And I owed this gentleman, this dog trainer, this dog whisperer, this dog person, I owed him a lot. He came to Australia, I was retiring, and he fell in love with Australia, as people do. You know, you come to work here, it's a great country, why wouldn't you fall in love? And he wanted to actually move here. So I volunteer in this organization, and I run this organization. I've set up a company. And the main difference between us, probably, and anyone else is that we don't see the dog as being the answer in itself. The dog is the answer as part of a program for the person. So a therapist, a psychologist, an occupational therapist, a social worker, they deliver 20 units of benefit. A dog by itself delivers 20 units of benefit. Put the two of them together, and you don't get 40 units, you get 100 units.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's huge. Because all of a sudden, the person that you're working with, the participant that is getting the dog, has somebody to assist them 24/7. A therapist is there for 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, maybe 3 hours. But here's somebody, and a dog is a somebody for us. The dog is the person's partner. The dog ceases to be a dog and becomes a partner to that person, a partner in that person's journey towards empowerment, a partner accompanying that person, accompanying that participant in their journey towards wellness. You cannot be well if you're not empowered. You can't be independent if you're not empowered. So this entire range, and that's the embryo of the company. That's how the company started in Australia. We started purely we only deal with people with psychological challenges. So we're talking about people with PTS. We try not to use the word, we try not to say PTSD. We call it PTS. We talk about people with autism. We talk about people with severe anxiety, people who are agoraphobic, not able to move out, not able to do things, people with uncontrolled seizures, anything that affects somebody's cognitive ability, anyone that is, any challenge that somebody has that affects their ability to cognitively understand what's going on around them. When I have a anxiety episode, you lose your cognitive ability to communicate, to know where you are, to be in the space. And there's no amount of telling people, you hear, it's not going to help. You're not there. But the dog is with you the whole time, and that dog is that stable element, that grounding element. And that's one of the main reasons why we use the dogs. So what we say is that let's work with our participants. Let's run a psychosocial program with them. Introduce the dog as a key element to that psychosocial program. Withdraw our therapists, and the dog then takes over and continues for the life of the dog or the life of the participant. So it's very different to all the other models in Australia. And it's a model that's gaining traction. It's a model that we're looking at doing research with universities, discussing with universities. It's a model that spans the professions. So where somebody else would have a dog trainer interacting with a person with PTS or interacting with a person with ASD, we have dog trainers interacting with the dogs, professional counselors, peer counselors, psychologists, OTs, interacting with the participant. Those two professions then come together to take the participant through. The biggest concern we have is that we don't want to do damage. And anybody with PTS or anybody supporting somebody with PTS understands how easy it is to do damage. People with PTS, people with ASD, these are real complex illnesses. And being able to train a dog doesn't mean you can work with somebody with PTS.
No, I would 100% agree with that.
And that's the difference. That's where we begin the program. That's where we start. We don't deal with physical morbidities. The assistance dog industry starts with physical morbidities, and they're trying to grow that to psychological challenges.
They're two completely different issues. Completely different, yeah.
Yes. And that is the difference between what we see. We see, and that was what we started, that's what we built. Our psychosocial program is now a document that's being trialed and tested all over. It's unique. We don't ever look at labels. The word PTS for us is to understand it face on, but then to leave it. And then we look at what challenges this participant has in order to reach the level of empowerment that they require. That's all.
Yeah.
We don't worry about the name. So we're completely diagnostic agnostic, if that makes sense. We don't care what the diagnosis is. We have a bespoke program that reviews that person in terms of their level of empowerment.
I can understand that because PTSD gets used a lot in the veterans community, and I believe it's overused, but people, the only advantage about describing it using PTS or PTSD is that people, it's familiar, and then you can move on. I like the way that you just use that to describe it, but then that's, as soon as you've described it, that's it. Then you just go and deal with the individual symptoms, issues to make them well.
Correct. The key is on the word individual.
Yep.
No two people are the same. So why should two people with PTS be the same?
Yeah.
They're not. They're different. Each person has different challenges that manifest differently at different times, in different situations, different environments. Some people have a problem in public. Some people have a problem in sleeping. Some people, All of these challenges are individual to that person, how they manifest, how they come, what triggers them, what's the beginning of it. We stand back and we say, all of that is great. That's nice for the world to think about. For us, we look at one person, we assess one person through our psychosocial program. So we're looking at the levels of safety, the levels of communication, the levels of wellness, the levels of, so we're looking at very, very practical things.
How do you measure wellness? Because we've, at Australian Veteran News, we've done a bit of research around how to accurately measure wellness, and it's a challenge.
We cannot, and that's why we cannot measure wellness, but we have, in the area of wellness and in the area of health and wellness, we have 40 elements. Each element has 20 sub-elements. We try and find which sub-elements are lacking, or which sub-elements are a challenge, or which and that is what we attack with the dog. That is what we utilize the dog to help the participant with. So if you can think of somebody coming to us, they are surrounded, we hope, by a scaffold that's helping them. It's just their support scaffold. Can be their psych, it can be their family, their parents, their partners, their children, whatever. But that scaffold is keeping that participant comfortable or able to work to a certain extent. But that scaffolding got to be with them. It means that they're not independent. I mean, they cannot leave that scaffold. We've all got scaffold. You've got one, I've got one. But we're able to leave that scaffold, or that scaffold, we know it's back there and it seems to be okay. So what we want to do is to bring our therapists with a therapy dog. This is not the dog the participant's going to get. And we climb into that scaffold. And we see the participant for about a year and a half, every single week with a therapy dog. And we're teaching them how to use the dog. We're teaching them about the dog, what is the dog, how the dog remains healthy. At the same time, we're doing that in a manner that is going to assist them to meet their challenges. So let's assume a challenge is walking into a room, that you're uncomfortable to walk into the room because you don't know what's behind the door. So you would like someone to go in before you. So now we're showing them how to use the leash, but going through a door. So the dog is going through before them. So now we're addressing their challenges, but at the same time, we're teaching them how to use a dog. And we had formal sessions about how to groom your dog. But we don't just say groom your dog. We say when you groom the dog, so do some mindful work. Do some relaxation work. Play with your dog. We say don't just play with your dog. Play with your dog so that your dog is giving you input, sensory input. When we say let's chat with your children, because that's really important to keep that, we're showing you how to chat with your children about the dog and with the dog. Play a game together with the dog. So the dog becomes critical and the dog starts to support you. So now, if you think about my analogy of climbing into the scaffolding, we're pushing some scaffolding away and we're making a hole for a dog. We're showing the support team, we're showing the participant how the dog's going to operate in their life. That takes about a year and a half. It doesn't go quicker. It's a long process. PTS is a tough one. It's complex. There's no formulas. So it takes us time to work through it and to build this hole with the participant, the hole in the participant's infrastructure. But we're there. Our therapists are there with their dog. Once their dog has been trained, now their dog is trained outside away from them, and the dog is trained specifically for them. How is the dog trained? We always tell people we never train a dog because the dog knows better than we do what to do. Don't train the dog. We want the dog to be natural. We want the dog to be as raw as possible. The dog's instincts for us are prime. Because our participant is not always cognitively competent, the dog cannot rely on that participant for a command.
Yes.
My son can't say sit. The dog's got to know when she wants to sit. And do I care whether she sits or stands? I don't, as long as she's doing her job. So I'm looking for a dog with the right instinct to do the job that we need to do with the participant to meet those deficits in their empowerment profile.
So, two questions off the back of that. How do you identify the dogs, and is there any specific breeds that you've found are better than the other one, or is it like the individual?
No, there are some breeds. We will never use an aggressive dog. The reason for that is we cannot train a dog against her instincts.
Yeah.
Because when she needs to work, it's her instincts that are working. And I use the word work loosely. She's playing. The idea of the dog is to play with the person. She's working, but if she doesn't love every bit of her job, she's not going to do it. Not unlike us. If we don't enjoy our jobs, we're just not going to do it. So we teach the dogs to love their work and to enjoy doing it and to gain tremendous reward from it, so they enjoy being with their participant. So the base rules are we never use dogs that are dangerous, dogs that are aggressive, dogs that are hunters, or so that takes a lot of dogs out. We then look for dogs that examine their handlers. So if you take a Labrador, why is a Labrador good? Because she's always examining her owner. We use a lot of Lagottas. Why are Lagottas good? Because they've got unbelievable concentration. Now, Lagotta is like an Italian dog, and her job was to hunt for truffles. So she's got unbelievable scent and unbelievable concentration. We have Springers, Spaniels. They're water dogs. They're gun dogs. They have this amazing affinity with their handler. So we have a number of breeds that we think are fantastic, but the breed isn't important because so much of the breed has been bred out of them. So much of the native instinct has been bred out, because we want our dogs to walk at the end of a leash through a show dog or something of that nature, or a dog to be 100% reliant on what we say. So if you think about your pet at home, you're saying sit and the dog's sitting. We want to say sit, and we want the dog to think, why should I sit now? What does my instinct say? Should I sit? Are my legs tired? Or should I stand so I can continue working? Let's assume that our dog is there to predict when somebody's going to have a seizure or somebody's going to have an anxiety attack. Now, their prediction isn't based on smell alone or feeling alone or taste alone or body language. It's based on everything. We're teaching the dog to examine that person. It's the dog's natural instinct. We're not teaching her. We're bringing the instinct out. We're saying to her, examine the person, and then you respond as you need. So if the dog says, I can't lie down and see the person's face, I must stand and see the person's face, the dog must do that.
It's amazing.
So
you're nurturing the instincts that they've had, where humans are basically removed their instincts for as long as they've been domesticated.
Correct. We're destroying those instincts because we want to be the boss. But humans are destroying the instincts because they want to be the boss. We're nurturing those instincts because we want the dog to be the partner. Very often, my son's dog will take over and will be in charge. When somebody has an anxiety episode, the dog must take over. The dog must push herself into you. She can't wait for you to say, push into me, because you're not communicating. When somebody's about to have a seizure, they're not going to be saying to the dog, am I having a seizure? Am I having a seizure? No, it's not. It's very different from a seeing eye dog or a physical assistance dog. We're talking about they're worlds apart. There is no similarity between the two dogs. If you trained a dog to be an assistance dog in the word of picking up or opening a door, that dog cannot work. Fundamentally, that dog cannot work as a psychological assistance dog, as a service dog. It's not possible. They've lost that ability. And one of our key training rules is never allow that dog to become prompt dependent. If that dog becomes prompt dependent, finished. Great pet, magic pet. But as a working dog in our world, it's not a...
They're completely at opposite ends of the spectrums, aren't they? When
Yes.
when like a person like myself, before I've spoken to you, thought about what a service dog would do, I straight away think of a guide dog, which just has to respond to commands and prompts the whole time.
It's exactly different.
Where the dogs that you guys are I'm even hesitant to use the word training now. You guys
That's
are nurturing. They're on the other end of the spectrum because they're thinking of themselves.
We don't train our dogs. What we do is we socialize our dogs. And that process takes around about a year and a half. Once the dog is completely socialized, and we've started to train her with the tasks that she has to do. So we have to show the dog how to respond if somebody's having a seizure, or how to respond if somebody's about to have an anxiety attack, or if somebody's feeling uncomfortable and they're sleeping. We've got to train the dog. We've got to show the dog and train her how to wake them up nicely, or how to push a button to alarm. So we do have to train things. So the dog starts a process and we have to show. Now, once we've done that process, it normally takes about a year and a half. The dog has now passed a public access test. She can now go anywhere. She's now bulletproof. No dog is bulletproof, but as bulletproof as possible. We then bring the dog and together with the participant, and they meet. And we're doing tests the whole time. Does this work? Is it a good bond? Isn't it a good bond? It's a nerve-wracking time for us.
Could imagine.
Once we're comfortable, then we go into what we call handover. And handover is when the bonding happens. We give the participant the dog, and then for 3 months, all we want to do is make the dog 100% dependent on the participant, and the participant 100% connected to the dog. So the two become completely connected with each other. The participant is connected with the dog is connected with the participant. They form one unit.
Yeah, they become embryonic.
And that's the bond, yes. And they sleep together, and they're together the whole time, and the dog gets time away from the participant, and then together with the participant, and it takes about 3 months for that bond to form.
So it's amazing to find out about this process. And we know that you didn't start working with veterans, but we understand that you've had a number of veterans.
Yes.
You've assisted a number of veterans. Could you just dig a little bit deeper into some of the success stories that you've had working with vets?
Well, we started working with veterans about 8-9 years ago. Some of the first people came in because the fellow that brought the program to Australia is himself a veteran, and I'm myself a veteran. So there's this tremendous empathy for the life of veterans within our organization. We started working with veterans, and probably the biggest success was when one of our veterans turned around to our trainer and said, I've reestablished my connection with my family, and we're back together again. When one of the partners of one of the veterans said, we're able to sleep together at night now without me being afraid for my safety. When one of the veterans was able to go to a footy game and manage the noise.
They're life-changing outcomes. I mean, that's things that a lot of people take for granted, but they are amazing outcomes.
But the most exciting thing is that we're doing a formal research program now, which has been funded through the Department of Veteran Affairs. Actually running this program with 20-odd veterans. DVA has now started to fund dogs for veterans today.
That's fantastic.
So if the veteran is qualified or requires a dog, and their medical support team says they need a dog, then there's a process that they can follow now with the Department of Veteran Affairs that enables them to get a dog. And this is all based obviously on the research that we're doing at the moment. So it's a very, very exciting time for veterans, or for not veterans only, but for people with PTS who feel that they can benefit from a dog, who feel that the regular treatments haven't worked for them. 9 times out of 10, we say to people, look at the dog as your last resort. When your psychologist says you've tried the gold standards and they haven't worked great for you, and we know that there's a lot of people out there that they don't work for, talk to us. A dog may well be the best solution for you. And that's not just us. Yes, our program, I believe, is safer, is better, is more correct, but the other trainers see the same thing.
It's fantastic to hear that DVA is supporting the Dogs for Life and therapy dogs in general. That's a big step forward.
It's a huge step forward, and they're doing it. I think they're doing it the right way as well. I think they're not supporting every fly-by-night organization. They're doing audits of the organization. They're monitoring things. The issue in our industry is that there's a lot of charlatans, or people who may mean the best, but to deal with someone with PTS is a complex business. Mm-hmm. You cannot do it unless you have qualified people interacting with that veteran on a week-by-week, day-by-day basis, monitoring, talking to the support people, liaising with that person's support team. Every veteran has a support team. The dog's going to become part of that team. So you've got to work with the partners, with the support people. It's a very exciting time for this level of interaction with veterans, with people who have PTS.
So how can veterans find out more about the Dogs for Life program?
If they contact us, we're online, Dogs for Life. I'm the one who takes every call, because we want somebody who understands what we're talking about to be the first port of call. So you're not going to be going to any answering machine, you're going to be coming to me. I will then discuss it with them, and I will give them the entry into, if they're veterans, in your case, I would give them the entry point into DVA. They can also discuss it directly with their therapists in DVA. So if they're working with Open Arms, or they can go onto the DVA website, it's there as well. And I can send you the link to you, and you can add it into your comments underneath. DVA are doing this, they're out there, they're looking for people to do it. I know the Open Arms therapists are all very aware of what's happening and how to get people into the program if this is what they're looking for.
Kevin, it's been fantastic to find out more about the Dogs for Life initiative. We'll certainly share it far and wide on the Australian Veteran News channel. And I just appreciate your time, and we'll definitely try and chat back in the next 6 months and see what it's evolved into then. But I appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to talking again.